Hi there. So for a fun little project, I wanted to see what it would take to create a mortgage calculator in React 18. So we're going to use create React app. And while that's cooking, we're going to go over and see if there's anything in NPM, the node package manager, that has to do with mortgages and mortgage calculations. It looks like there's at least one of them. So it has a bunch of methods to calculate things. So it could calculate minimum payment of a mortgage. It could calculate the loan length of a mortgage. Okay, we're going to use this one, the amortization table of the payoffs. So it looks like all you have to do is supply the loan amount, the interest rate, and the loan length in months, and you get back this nice calculation of the monthly payment, which is misspelled, but that's not a big deal. We'll fix that. The default total interest that's paid over the life of a loan, as well as this little data thing that lets you, tells you every month what are you going to pay in interest, principal, and what is going to be the remaining balance. Pretty cool. So we're going to go into, okay, so now this is finished. We're going to go into mortgage calculator and start the server. Let's do that. I'm going to open it in VS Code. All right, let's go ahead and install this mortgage module, npm install mortgage. Which is going to add it to our package.json file. It should be here somewhere, mortgage, here we go. And we're using React 18, pretty cool. All right, so now this got installed. We're going to open up this server, npm start. It's taking some time. Okay, so this is our default page, which is app.js. Oops. App.js. So we're going to take out the header from this default page. Just leave a blank slate that we could work with. So before we start, what kind of things we would actually want to see in a mortgage calculator? So number one, obviously a monthly payment. That would be nice. Number two, maybe total interest over time. Over the time of a loan. Number three, it would be nice to see the principal, some kind of a graph of principal versus the interest payments. And number four, maybe the table of amortization payments. I guess that would be called the amortization table. All right. So let's go ahead and start. So number one, we're going to display the balance, a mortgage balance. Actually, it probably should be called the total balance. And then maybe the rate, as well as the length. And for now, let's just go ahead and hard code these as variables. So we're going to have the balance. Maybe call it total balance. Total balance, and that's going to be, let's make it $100,000. Then we're going to have a rate, which let's make it 5.9, or maybe 6. Let's make it 6. And then the yearly, maybe length in years. Just call it years. And let's assume 30 years. Cool. So total balance is going to be our total balance. Done. Then we're going to have a rate of whatever the rate is. And then the length of mortgage, which is going to be years. Cool. Yay, progress. Okay, let's go ahead and do the app.css and not center the text. Cool. And once we're doing that, maybe put some kind of a margin in there so it doesn't look so bad. 20 pixels or something. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually use the methods from this mortgage module. So we said it was called get payoff, maybe get mortgage payoff. Yeah, get mortgage payoff. We're going to pass in the total balance. We're going to pass in the rate. Now, the rate is going to be a percentage, so it's divided by 100. And then the years, but it's in months, so we have to multiply by 12. Cool. And let's call it for now. And let's see if it actually returns what we think it returns. So we'll console it out to the console. Do inspect in here, console, refresh. Okay, we see this little it. So what is it? So we have the monthly payment. Copy property. I think we just do copy. Cool. And then we have the total interest. Yeah, default total interest. That's good. Then we have the data, which has in it an array of the things we need are interest, principal payment, and the balance. So it makes sense if we start off with $100,000 and we pay the interest, the principal of $99, about $100, we've only paid, so the remaining balance would be $99,900. Okay, cool, that makes kind of sense. So let's see if we could quickly get to that. So we're going to destructure those properties. So we have a data. We have, what was it called again? It was called the default total interest. Default total interest. And then we have data, default total interest, and the other thing we need is the monthly payment, which we want to rename to something without a typo, monthly payment, like that. Okay. So obviously there's no more it. So let's do this. So we're going to have the monthly payment is going to be monthly payment. And then the default total interest will be this. Total interest. Default total interest. Okay, this should be working now. And it is. So for balance of this, rate of this, length of this, monthly payment, and it's going to be this. And then total interest over the course of the loan is going to be $115,000. Cool. All right, so the next step we're going to do is, so we took care of this stuff. Let's do a graph of principal versus interest. So for this, I want to use a graph library called Recharts. I found it pretty cool. So Recharts is a composable charting library built on React components. To install it, all you do is you just do npm install Recharts, and it has some great examples how to use it. So the chart we're going to do is a stacked area chart. It's hard to see over here because there's not enough space to show. But basically, you're showing what the different areas look like. Right? The areas are stacked. So the cool thing is you can actually go into Code Sandbox. There's a link here, and you could try it out, and you could copy the code out. So that's what we're going to do. So let's copy this code out. And we're going to create a new component called, let's go to principal interest chart. Right? Paste in the code. Okay, so export default function, we're going to call it principal interest chart. Now in this case, the data sits right next to it, but this is the data that's being worked on, and as you could see, it has a name, and there are some keys in there that are generating the areas here. So we're going to obviously be providing our own data. So let's call it chart data maybe. Property. But let's just see that we could actually import this into our app and that it works before we take our next step. So we're going to do a div with this component we just created called principal interest chart, and we're going to pass it our data, which we get from a calculation as the chart data that it's expecting. So chart data. Let's go back to our app, and it doesn't like it because it doesn't know. Okay, so it's saying styles.css. We could fix that. Let's remove that. Going in styles right now. Refresh. Okay, it doesn't know what recharts is because we never installed the module. So npm install recharts. Let's do that. And VS Code automatically imported this, which is good. npm start. Okay, so let's restart the server again and see what happens this time. So it looks like it's working. We have a chart that's being generated. Let's push down all these things. They look a little bit too cramped for my liking. So let's just quickly add a class of, I don't know, call it a line item maybe, and just increase the margin bottom is going to be maybe 20 pixels. Just to make it a little more pleasant to the eyes. And we're just going to add this class name of line item to all of these guys here. This and this and this and that. Like so, and even this one over here. All right. Okay, cool. So it looks a little bit more spaced out. So now, obviously, this graph, doesn't do anything for us right now, but it looks like it has 3 areas. So we actually only want to have 2 areas of interest and principal. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we go over to this chart, we're going to get rid of this data here. That's the data that came with this chart. And we have our own chart data that we are providing to it. And basically the idea is you have this area chart. And the cool part about this recharts is that it has many different React components, and you could turn them off and turn them on. So for example, Cartesian grid. Okay, right now it doesn't have any data, so let me just do that. Then I'll talk about it. So we need the data. So we need the chart data, and we only need certain things out of that data. So we're going to map it, and we're going to return something out of it. So what do we need out of it? So we need to have the principal amount, which we're going to rename to principal uppercase so that it shows up nicely in the tooltip and on the legend. And then interest, we're going to rename interest like that. And then the second parameter to map is an index of an element in the array. So we're going to return back principal, interest, and index plus 1. Index plus 1, like so. Okay, so this is what we're going to be turning out of it. Principal, interest, and index plus 1. Cool. And then if you look at the area chart, it basically has 3 areas. So for this, so we only need 2 areas. Right, and I think for x-axis, it's going to use the name, which actually in our case, we wanted to use the index, right, from this data. We wanted to use the index to be the x-axis. So we're going to have a whole bunch of these payments from 1 to 360. That's going to be on the x-axis. And then the actual areas are going to be keyed by either principal here or data key interest here. So the green is the principal and the yellow is the interest. So you could see, and actually it's actually pretty cool because based on how much space you have available, it's going to weed out the x-axis. So you could see that it starts with 14, even though we have all the values from 1 through 360, it's going to sort of deal with how much space it has. So for example, you could make it wider. So if we go to width and make it, let's say 700, it's going to give you more data points here. But overall, you could see that your principal is going to be going higher as you pay it off. And then at the end of the day, but the last payment, you're going to pay pretty much everything in principal, and you're paying very little interest at the end. But in the beginning, of course, this is how it works. The monthly payment is about $600. So the monthly payment stays the same throughout the whole time. But the principal is going to be going up, 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 up. And the interest starts off being very high, but gets less over time. Okay? And then the last thing I want to do is, and then you could see it looks kind of geeky that it has these like lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the chart and turn those lines off. So that's this Cartesian grid. We don't need the Cartesian grid, so we're going to turn it off. And look how the chart looks now. It looks much more smooth. You could still see the tooltips, and you could see that on the 35th payment, we're going to pay this much interest and this much principal, and so on. But you don't see the Cartesian grid lines. Cool. All right. So the last thing I want to do is we want to see the amortization table. Now, I could just use a regular HTML table, but I like using the semantic React components. So if we go into semantic React, it's basically just a library that already has some components out there. So for our table, we're going to use this table here that they have. Let's see what's a good table. Something really simple I want. Let's see. Table. Let's stick with this one over here. Just without this funky ribbon. So you could do try it. Gives you the code. You copy it out. Now, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create a new component, call it the amortization table. Copy this in. And what are going to be our headers? So we're going to have maybe a payment number cell. We're going to have the principal cell, and we're going to have an interest cell, and then maybe the last thing is going to be remaining balance, like that. Cool. And this will also take the data, kind of need that, and then so let's see. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. We have these rows. So for every row, you're going to have the cells. Footer, we don't need a footer here. Let's remove that. Gone. And then table body. So let's just concentrate on doing one row, and then we'll see how we could have more rows. So what would it take for one row to work? So it would just be a table of a bunch of table cells. So, all right, so we have this data. And so this is going to be, so the header is going to be the same. For the rows, we're going to have rows based on our data. So for our data, we're going to map the data And for each row in the data, which we could just do it as, let me just structure it. So we're going to have, we need the interest, we need the principal, and we need the balance, the remaining balance. And the second argument is an index, like I already mentioned. And then all of that is going to be our data, our table row here. Okay. So we're going to have 4 cells. The first cell is going to be index plus 1. So let's just make all of the cells the same and just see what that does. So let's bring this table in. Table example pagination. We're going to call it amortization table. And export it as such. And then just use that in here. So our little line item. And instead of this, we're going to bring in the amortization table and pass it the data. Okay, and of course it's not going to work because we never installed the semantic stuff. So let's go ahead and see how we do that. So getting started, get started, here we go. So they give you 2 options to install it, either through a package manager or a CDN. Now, I kind of mix the two because there is a JavaScript component and there is a CSS component. So for the JavaScript component, I use the npm install. So npm install semantic UI React, like so. For the CSS component, though, I go ahead and do it using the link that they provide for the CSS. So it would be the style sheet and then the semantic min CSS. So I'm going to go into the index.html page and just plop it as one of these links, like so. And now I should have the library installed. So npm start. Okay. It's thinking about it. Ah, look at that. So we have a payment number. Now we have the same numbers for all of them. So let's go ahead and fix that. But the table is actually working, which is good. So all we need to do here is actually put the numbers in. So it's principal here, interest here, and the balance here. So you could see that as you're paying this down, you start off with a balance of $100,000, but then as you're paying it down, when you pay 99 for principal, it goes down to 99,900 and so on, right? So as you're paying more principal, your remaining balance gets less and less, and then at the end, after 360 payments, you end up with 0. Your balance is paid off. Congratulations. So this was a little fun project. I'm going to call this part 1 because it still needs some cleanup. Number one, it would be nice to have these numbers to be dynamic, not just hard-coded up front. That's easy to do, but we're going to leave that for part 2. As well, it makes sense to do some other cleanup, like put these prices and stuff and nice price format. It's not a big, as well as on the chart and the table. Not a big deal, but we'll leave it for part 2. If you enjoyed this video, you could click on the like button below or subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.